Listen, most investments today feel like second jobs in disguise. Real estate, you're a landlord. Stocks, you're a day trader. Crypto, you're a full time researcher. But you've got a life to live. Your investments should help you live it. You deserve a strategy that builds wealth without sacrificing your time, sanity, or freedom. And that's why more Americans are choosing gold. Gold doesn't demand your attention, it doesn't crash overnight, and it doesn't care who's trending on Twitter. Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of investors just like you, people who want both profit and peace of mind, secure their future with real physical gold. There's a reason smart investors are going back to basics, choosing the only asset trusted by civilizations for over 5,000 years. Gold offers freedom and peace of mind 1 ounce at a time. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com to get your free wealth protection kit. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Matrix Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, and we are moving out of the Matrix into prime reality here. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube, and thank you to our wonderful moderator, Ronnie. Good to see you, my friend. Of course, my wonderful wife, Christine, as inspired, the wise thumbs in a live chat. And we're asking a big question today. And why are we even asking it? So I am of the firm belief, always have been, that you cannot solve a problem you haven't identified correctly. So often I hear people talk about, either in books or I hear them talk about on shows, on podcasts, and almost everyone says, when they talk about the world's problems, say, this is the world's biggest problem. And then they go on to say what it is, what they think it is. And almost never are they actually correct. And I don't say this in a pompous way, but actually, when you think about it, it's really simple to identify. So without trying to make anybody wrong here, mostly what people are describing are what are the biggest symptoms, okay? What are the biggest symptoms that they're trying to relieve? But what is actually the problem? So I'm asking you, it's a serious question, and not to make, as I said, not to make anyone wrong, but what do you believe is the biggest problem? Actually, leave the live chat open here. What do you believe is the biggest problem in the world today? I'm going to put this on here for a moment, okay? There you go. Let's see if we can't.
The biggest problem in the world is that there are much more takers than givers. Very simple.
Okay, somebody said the biggest problem is there are much more takers than givers. Okay, what else could be the biggest problem? A loss of community. Okay. A lack of genuine love. The evil, ignorance, apathy. Those are all great answers, by the way. And they're getting much closer to the root of it. Well, while you guys are sort of discussing this, I will let you know, according to worldwide polls, what people think the 5 biggest problems in the world today are. And like I said, buried lead, these are all symptoms. We're going to get into the real problem. But the top 5 answers, according to polls: armed conflict and geopolitical instability. I understand why people would see that, especially in war zones, people that are in notorious war zones or century-long war zones. I get it. And it is a big problem, but it is a symptom, not a problem. Another one, climate change and extreme weather. We could discuss climate change, specifically the way that it's framed today. We all know that things are always changing and moving, and the climate, if you will, over long periods of time is no exception. What they're claiming is that we are changing it. That's a bold statement, but hey, here we are. That's perceived to be one of the big problems. Economic instability and inflation. I know why a lot of people feel that way, because the majority of people live in poverty and live in they don't have their basic needs met on a regular basis. And so clearly that's what they would identify as the problem. The fourth one today, this is really in the last 5 years, this has really moved up. This wasn't considered a big problem, was misinformation, disinformation, and AI risks. Clearly a big one, but once again, a symptom, not a root cause. And the fifth, according to polls, is food insecurity and global hunger. Okay. So this is worldwide, according to polls, what the biggest problems are. So now I'm going to go and make a very bold statement. I'm going to tell you that these are not the problems. There's a root cause for all of it. And it didn't start yesterday. It didn't start 10 years ago. It didn't start with corruption in politics. It didn't start in 1950. It didn't start with the JFK assassination. It didn't start with World War II or World War I. It didn't start 100 or 200 or 300 years ago. It started much, 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 much longer ago. The biggest problem that we need to solve individually and collectively is the error in our thinking. We are systemically, culturally, and in all other ways thinking wrong. There's no, and I say collectively, we are erroneous thinkers. It's not that some of our thoughts, the general construct in which we live and how we think about it is dead wrong. It's going completely in the wrong direction. Now I know it's a big statement, it's going to trigger people, but that's just what it is. And so we're going to go into how we think wrongly and what we actually need to change. Before we go into this, I want to say something about the word nature that we might hear a lot of and what it means. So most people think of nature only in one way. It's everything that's out there and green and growing and sort of existing without us doing anything about it. Anything that isn't artificial in our perception, we call nature. Okay. That's a good definition, but it's not complete. The nature of something is its true essence. It's its true meaning. So like you say, this is not his or her nature. What we're saying is the way that they're behaving, that's not actually who they are. So we have to think of the word nature also in the sense of it describes the true essence of something. This is important. So there we will break down the ways that we think erroneously and how we can correct our thinking. And why is this clearly the biggest problem? Because everything in the human world and beyond it that we affect begins without thinking. We don't do anything without there having been thought. Now, for most people, it's very little thinking, frankly. It's a programmed thing. But even so, everything that we see, every building, every road, every construct, every system, everything started with thoughts. And the systems are wrong because the thoughts were wrong. Okay, that's not hard to decipher, actually. So when we start trying to fix the symptoms, the wars, the famine, the conflict, the sicknesses, when we try to fix the symptoms, we will continue to face the same problems in bigger ways. It's just like people when they start fixing the symptoms in their body or masking the symptoms. You take some sort of painkiller for your headache. That doesn't do anything to the actual underlying problem. It doesn't help with it. It just helps you not feel it, which in the long run makes it worse because you didn't address the root problem. You addressed the symptom. So think of everything that there are government programs for. It usually only addresses the symptoms. Think of everything that there are policies for. It usually only addresses the symptoms. If it wanted to address the root cause, then we would talk about our false ways of thinking and believing. Okay, so there we go. We think, collectively speaking, that progress, We confuse progress with destruction. We think that progress and evolution means that we are continually building more and expanding into more and more material and more everything. And so we have created a system that only allows us to do that when we destroy the very nature that we need to survive and live. That's an incredibly crucial step in our erroneous thinking, and it didn't happen by happenstance. It was created. And we will also include the thought that we complete, not just the thought, but the realization that we live in an artificial world. We're describing the artificial world that was created from our erroneous thinking, including potentially a complete simulated construct that we find ourselves in. So we call ourselves civilized, but no other creature destroys their habitat in order to survive. They change it up and they build nests and dams and what, but they don't destroy the habitat, right? To survive. Actually, we're the only species who trains another species to attack or kill our own species. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So we're the only species that, for example, trains a dog to potentially attack or kill a fellow human being, a fellow member of our species. No other species does that. Only we do that. That is how far our erroneous thinking has gone. Technology is praised and we worship it now collectively, once again speaking, over the living things around us. So in other words, are you going to save your phone or are you going to save the tree? Most people will save their phone, fuck the tree. And this is sort of that really pinpoints. I see this all the time. People are, even for just profit, not necessity, for profit, they're willing to sacrifice a natural habitat of many species. They're willing to destroy all of that just for profit, right? Not for necessity, because they don't value that any longer, forgetting that that's what we need. We can't breathe without plants and trees. We can't eat. Nothing works without all of that, but we forgot that. And so that is a clear error in our thinking. Let me move on to the next one here. There we go. So we have forgotten how knowledge and wisdom work. And so we glorify and we preach that the written word is everything. And even though I cherish certain books and I think certain books hold tremendous knowledge and value, they are but a sign. They are an arrow pointing in a certain direction. A book itself can never contain the real knowledge and wisdom that we can access through our divine faculties. So books can be helpers, but we have outsourced how we perceive knowledge to external experts, to authors, to anything outside of us. And so our only way of learning is to obtain information from outside of us through our eyes reading, our ears hearing, even touching, and then we process that information and we call it knowledge. We memorize stuff in school, and we glorify institutions and bodies of work. The experts say, statistics say, the doctor said. And because in a technocratic society, experts are the rulers, and that's what we saw in 2020, you couldn't say anything because the science says, the doctor, the scientist said so, and that was the gospel truth. And people were programmed to believe that because of their erroneous thinking. Never included in all that teaching and knowledge, almost anywhere in the world, is a substantial amount of knowledge and wisdom on how to live harmoniously, just within ourselves, not even to speak with others. Where do you remember one course in school or one class in school that actually taught you how to live harmoniously with your friends, family, coworkers, and maybe in your village or town or city, not to speak with nature. There are certain private schools that have an emphasis on that. Maybe the Waldorf program does, but for the most part, that's never part of a curriculum. So we don't ever learn how to do that. We learn dog eat dog. We learn competition. We learn to trust experts. We learn to trust schools and teachers, but we don't trust the within. We have multiple faculties that when they work together, we can get a full picture. In other words, we have spirit intuition, right? We have feeling that's physically based from the body. We have thought and logic that is in the brain. Each of these things separately is incomplete, spirit being the most complete, but through the interpretation of the body. So we've become isolated thinkers at best, if we think. Most people don't, but isolated thinkers at best, analysis, clearly just one hemisphere of the brain, solely logic based, which is one aspect. And so we are completely excluding all creative thinking from the process here. And if you look at society at large, that's what's happening. You look at, for example, modern cities, how they have changed specifically in the last 50, 60 years. Brutal, horrific, uh, just anti-human architecture. That's not even architecture. It's just a vomit of everything that's horrific, right? The cubes, the cold, steely boxes. This anti-human design has no love, has no geometry, has no symmetry, has no beauty, no inspiration. It's just brutal, forceful, horrific, uh, un uncreation, if we want to call it that. Where does it come from? From purely cold, calculated, uh, cynical thinking. No feeling, no intuiting, no real divine knowing. So this is the modern mind. It is divorced, and we have to bring it back into an alignment with all these other aspects of ourselves to do that. Now more than ever, we are in a feedback loop where the machines, including, of course, now the AI models, the chat GPTs, the Groks, and all the others, are steering us in a machine like thinking, calibrated not for harmony, not for co creation, not for divinity, not for love, but for what? Efficiency and maximum output. That's what that's what the machine like thinking has done. That's what the industrial revolutions were all about. And that's why the industrial revolutions have created the educational system that we're still in. It's still doing that. It's building machine like people, machine thinkers. And now we're moving into the digital age where the AI is turning us into AI thinkers, which are, like I said, calibrated for efficiency in all aspects. Well, efficiency is just one of many, many necessities in our lives. And the machines will never be able to teach us true divine efficiency the way that our co creative spirit can. What else? We outsource basically everything that should be sacred. Think about it. It begins with the first traumatic experience in every human being's life, which is now birth. And I would probably say conception, the way that most people are conceived, either as an accident or as a pure product of lust. And unfortunately, that's how it has been for a long time. And that's considering natural conception. Not saying we don't even talk about lab conception, where once again it's a purely technocratic conception in a lab, in cold and sterile and environments where love is absent. So it begins that now conception and birth and healing and education and food, everything has been outsourced to people outside of us, and frankly we don't even know who they are. Mostly people don't know who the nurses are that come in while a woman gives birth in a hospital. Think about it. It's the most sacred thing that happens, one of the most sacred things that possibly could ever happen, especially in a woman's life. And then there are these strangers that are touching and interfering and giving their instructions, and they're having their needs and whatnot. All of this traumatic for the child, traumatic for the woman, traumatic for everything. And it's a given away of power. Now people will say, they'll I'll always get criticized for this, but don't you understand that sometimes birth can be complicated and there can be necessities? Of course I understand that, but we're talking about something that has happened since the beginning of time and used to happen outside of hospitals. People knew how to prepare for it. People knew how to nurture their being, their bodies. Women knew that, and women taught each other, and their birth was at some point not something um, treated as a disease or something dangerous, but it was at one point, I believe, a painless experience before it was perverted, right? Um, Same healing. We have outsourced all of these things. People don't know anything about it anymore, which is what another error in thinking. So please remember that all of these things originate from false thinking only. Why were you brought up in this way? Because of false thinking of our elders, of our ancestors, of our teachers. That's not to blame them, because they were taught in wrong ways, and their ancestors were wrong and were taught in wrong ways. But the root cause is the error in our thinking. So we believe we need all these experts and doctors and scientists and teachers, but that's not true. And we trust strangers over our own instincts, intuitions, and knowings. How many times do people have a clear feeling what they should do, and then the doctor says, "Oh, no, 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 this is dangerous. Absolutely no, I don't allow you to do this." And then people say, "Okay, well, the doctor is an authority, and clearly they know better. They know everything. They know better than me." And the scientist says, "Oh, no, 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 you can't do that. You're not allowed to say that. We hold the truth." And this is how our society is functioning. And so, whatever the doctors and the scientists and the politicians and these people say is what most people will follow, even if it's a huge contradiction, which it is almost always. Like I said before, and this is a much bigger subject than what meets the eye, the written word is the spell. So it didn't begin with the written word. It actually began with all the false spoken words, where we once shared one singular language, and for the most part it wasn't an audible language, it was a telepathic way of communicating. But then we have steered away from an original language that we shared, that was clear, that was co-creative, and that was based on frequency. So those were harmonious sounds strung together in a way that these frequencies helped our co-creations. Today, we have the written word, which we perceive to be the law, and it is the spell that is being cast upon us every single day. The written word is literally uh, one of the original sources of our erroneous thinking. Priests and scholars rewrote everything, and they convinced people that they needed intermediaries. It was so bad that in certain centuries it was forbidden for people to even read the Bible without a priest present. Think about it. The priest had to make sure that if people could read, which they didn't want them in the beginning to do that, so the knowledge and the true wisdom was taken away from the people, and then it was kept by a few select bloodlines and families and priests and high priests. They kept it for themselves and gave people complete horse shit. Everything's Everything that our history books lay out is it's it isn't pure fiction, because there's some facts in there, but it's like taking, basically taking one 1%, and even that 1% of truth is distorted. All the rest isn't there. It was taken out. It was hidden from us. And so how we learn to think based on complete falsehoods, and that's why our thinking is wrong. And so words and the written word and scriptures and books replaced our memory. Why is there so little indigenous knowledge in books? Well, because they didn't have books. All of the incredible body of knowledge and wisdom that was passed on from one generation to the next in the clans, for example, here in the Indian clans, was passed down through oral traditions, through prayer, and through ceremony. There was no written word. And even to this day, what we can read in books is but a fraction, because they didn't want to put it in books. Because why? The written word is used as a weapon. They began to understand that. So when they shared something with people outside of their culture and they started writing that down, that was used against them, that knowledge. So they didn't. And no indigenous culture that had a profound understanding of truth and life and proper thinking wrote all of that down. That's why we can't really read about it in books. Every now and then one comes along, but usually the source of that knowledge isn't from other people or other books, but it is directly from the field. So this is where we are. We have forgotten this, and it was done on purpose. We believe artificial systems to be normal. How often do people say to me when I talk about these things, and they say, "But John, I live in a real world, and in a real world, I have to pay taxes and rent and cars and what no, no, no." And I said, well, that's all well and good, but that's not the real world. That is the matrix. That's literally the fake world. We all have our foot in it. So I'm not preaching here. I'm telling you, I'm not saying you, I'm saying we have erroneous thinking, but we call that normal. Think about it. We go out and we travel to a place. Let's say you go on a trip of 700 miles. You travel somewhere. Between your home and when you arrive there, you have never stepped onto anything natural. You step into your car, you step on the asphalt, right? And then you step into your car and then you drive on that road. Everything's artificial. The car, the road, the gas stations, the restaurants, everything in between. You never step on anything natural for 700 miles until you arrive there. And then maybe you step on sand or on grass or on something like that. And if you're smart, you have removed your shoes. Other than that, you're still not stepping on anything natural. Think about it. And we call all of that normal. For some reason, we were led to believe that how nature was, how the real thing was, how prime truth and reality was bad and wrong and horrible and tough and hard. And now this is the solution, and everything that's artificial is great. Well, that's probably why most people are depressed, sick, and obese, because it's so great. So once again, it is how we think about these things that doesn't allow us to actually change something. So in these artificial structures, we go by when the shift starts, the night shift or the day shift. We go by when stores are open. We go by when restaurants are open. We go by when events happen. All of these are artificial schedules. They don't sync up with any natural rhythm, not the circadian rhythm or any bigger rhythms. None of it. It's all going actually against a rhythm. Cities, a lot of big cities thrive on nightlife. Well, we are actually not designed for the most part to be night active. We're day active. So all of this is completely upside down. Most people spend most of their time indoors. They eat foods that come from highly processed things, and they are in plastic, and then they go into a microwave. So if there was a nutrient in there, it's going to get nuked. And we think this is normal. And when I tell somebody, I don't know, hey, we're not going to put in a microwave, to say, well, Everybody has a microwave. You're weird. See, really, I am weird. So I don't want to nuke my food in a microwave, and I'm the weird one. I see how this works. And so all of this, once again, I know people say this is radical and you have to be realistic and we can't all just live on the land. Well, yeah, we can. People just don't want to because they think of that as hard and bad and wrong, and they think of city as good and true and easy. Who taught us that? Who showed us that? Here's the worst part. We accept suffering as normal. It's the default mode of our reality, and it's true. Way more people suffer than not. As a matter of fact, how many people do you know that are truly happy? Like, I mean, really have a sense of joy and happiness in their lives that is more dominant than their sense of sadness or anger, frustration, despair, depression, whatever. It's a tiny minority. I probably have 10 people in my life that I know that live more by the joyous default than by problem default. Yet we accept it as normal. We accept it as so normal that upward of 60 or 70% of the people accept that they need to take pills that alter their perception of their feelings or numb them in order to make it through a day in the real world. All of this is because we've lost the ability to think and ask critical questions. Suffering is not natural. There is no other species that lives their life in suffering. Every species experiences moments of suffering or shorter periods of suffering, but no species lives in a permanent or prolonged state of suffering but the human being, completely self-created, by the way. We allow ourselves to live this way. Stress is not a real thing. There are moments, fight or flight moments, that every species has, but stress is a prolonged state of pressure. That's not a real thing. We invented that. We invented a lifestyle that creates that. Depression, not a real thing. Hormonal imbalance, not a real thing. All human inventions. But they manifest and people experience them, so they think they're real because they have forgotten how to think properly. And all of this over centuries and millennia has caused us to completely forget about our own divinity and co-creative power. So the biggest problem in the world today is our erroneous thinking and believing about ourselves. We're convinced we're weak, sinful, broken, small. Can you imagine what it must have taken? What a number they pulled on the human population that they could concoct a story where we are the children of God, but we have nothing to do with God's divinity. We're small, we're tiny, we're sinners, we're broken. We have no worth unless we surrender and worship and fear God. You know how many times I've been asked if I'm a God-fearing man, a God-fearing Christian, a God-fearing person? I said, no. I've never feared the creator, the real creator, not the God of this world. I have no relationship with the God of this world. I could care less about the God of this world. The God of this world is not your friend. It's not in your camp. It's a very vindictive figure. I'm talking about the source of all creation. Now, as any truly loved child knows, if you've really been loved, you don't fear your father, you don't fear your mother. Even if you know as a child that something you did will have a natural consequence, but when you're really loved, you don't fear your father or your mother. So no, we've forgotten that we're created in the image of the divine. And here we have to understand, we have to go beyond what we think that means. I'm not just talking about, and specifically not about the body. the image, I'm talking about the spirit image. We have the reflection, we have the same essence in us. We must have the same essence in us. It's a beautiful example that Wayne Dyer always used to share is like, if you cut an apple pie and you take that piece of apple pie and you bring it to the other side of the world, is it not still apple pie? No matter how thin you slice that pie, it's still apple pie. So if we are on a spirit level, created and coming from source, we cannot be anything else but that. But we can surely forget it and think we're not. We have the potential to heal, to create, and to know all things, not just some. This is a big statement. We can't memorize all things. We clearly can't read about all things and then memorize them, but we can tap into the true field of all information, not the fake digital field, not the fake AI field, but the real field of all creation at any time we can. Whether we do it or not, it's a whole different story. Most people never really do it consciously. Some do it a lot. Once again, it's our thinking that's going to dictate whether we do it or not. And all of this led to our belief that control is necessary. So the question is not, why do we need a big parent in the form of a government, Congress, a president, a governor, whatever? The question today is only, who is it going to be? What party? What are their policies? Are they liberal or conservative? But I'm asking you, why would we need these as essentials if we remember who we truly are? Why would you need anyone to govern over you? And I'm not speaking out against a agreed upon system. Like I say, always say, where two or more people live together, there's going to be some sort of agreements, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Why would you need anyone to rule over you? Why is that a thing? What had to happen in our thinking to make that possible, and in our actions? In the true divine culture which we once were a part of, there was no such thing as a ruler. There was no such thing as authority over you by another being. It's interesting, isn't it? So today, people are taught to fear freedom. They're taught to fear sovereignty. And what is being portrayed as freedom, the land of the free, that's not freedom at all. It's just in some ways, a little more liberty than in other places. So what had to happen? We had to be convinced that we are like children, and that they are better, stronger, more capable, and beings with more rights than we have, that can then rule over us. And this is subconsciously what everyone accepts. Everyone accepts that someone in a elected position has more rights than they do. And that's how it's lived, because you accept things and you accept their rule over you because they're in an elected position. Why? I don't know. I don't know why we do that. Well, because of the errors in our thinking. So the problems manifest in a million ways, but the solutions are extremely simple. In this construct, over and over and over and over and over again, the people who have gained a lot of clarity and who were able to show others how to get that clarity have done it through the same things. They have first, almost everybody has first, they were seeking connection with nature. They were stepping away from the hustle and bustle of society and all of that. And almost everybody went somewhere, on a mountain, on a hill, in the forest, whatever. And that's where they were. So nature is an essential, the way that we perceive nature here is an essential part of it. Stillness, quietness, calming down, slowing down, going within, breathing properly, meditating and praying. All of these things were essentials in every story of every human being that had ever anything worthwhile to share. Every single one of them, at least to my knowledge. So connection with the land, going within, and then almost everyone had the desire to create a and cultivate a certain space of love in and with nature that was theirs, and where they could commune with the divine and do it in an easier and in a directer way. That's as simple as it is. There is, and I know people don't how to put this. There's almost no way to begin and sustain this journey while you are completely plugged into the matrix. It just doesn't work. The matrix is designed to keep you in your erroneous ways of thinking. That's all that it's designed to do. And what it fears the most is for you to change fundamentally. So it's not going to give you that opportunity. It's not designed to do it. Don't blame it. It's not its essence. Its essence is to do what it does. But then there's the other side. And then there's the nature of things. And your true nature is not the matrix. Otherwise, you'd be happy, you'd be fulfilled, you'd be joyous, you'd have everything you ever wanted. But we don't. And so the when people say, what is the solution? I don't want to be someone who says, oh, I have the solution. The solution is simple. It's accessible to everyone. It's just that people don't want to accept what that means. It means radical change. It means repentance. What does repentance mean? That we see the errors of our ways and of our thinking, and we change our hearts and minds. That's what repentance means. It is not a religious concept. It's a concept of real living. And so, yes, there is a true, real, and right way that we can be and live. There are not a million true right ways to live. There's many, many, many wrong ways, some more than others, but there is a true way that we can find, and it used to be lived like that. I don't know exactly when, but we had that at some point. And if we truly wish to transcend for good what we have been experiencing collectively for so long, then we have to accept that we're going to leave everything that's erroneous and false and hurtful and destructive behind. Everything. Absolutely everything. And why wouldn't we? So you will hear in the next days and weeks and months, you will be engulfed by language, by rhetoric, by visuals, by books, by everything that will praise and glorify the new age of technology and technocracy. They won't call it technocracy, but you will be told that AI is the final solution that humanity has been needing. And even significant groups of our community and people in the freedom and spiritual communities and truth communities will fall for that. But it is as wrong today as it will be in 10 years. It's erroneous thinking. And the technocratic path will never, ever lead to the transcendence of the suffering and the destruction. It will not. And why do I know that? because we can now prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that multiple technocratic societies have existed before, and there is nothing left of them. They disappeared. They were wiped out. Every single technocratic society, civilization that has lived was wiped out. And we're doing it again. So the only way to step out of it is to change our thinking. We must fundamentally question how and what we think about ourselves, how and what we think about the world, how and what we think about the future. Fundamentally. And if you need inspiration, go talk to the gardeners, go talk to the beekeepers, go talk to the old women that cultivate their flowers and that spend a lot of time in nature and their seeds. Go speak with them. Ask them what is most important, what is most essential. And they'll let you know. They have some of that wisdom. So this is where we stand, friends. We have to fundamentally change our thinking. And that's both the biggest problem and the cure right there. Here's the most beautiful part about it. Your thinking is happening inside of you. It's not happening inside of another being, and you don't need anything but you to do it. You don't need anything but making a new decision. So the biggest problems in the world will not be solved by a bigger budget. They will not be solved by raising taxes. They will not be solved by electing somebody else into office. They will be solved by changing our thinking. When we change our thinking, we change our visions into the future. When we change our visions into the future, we change our actions. And when we change our actions, our lives are changed, the world around us is changed, and the consciousness with which we move forward is raised. That's it. That's all there is to it. All right, friends, I want to thank you for joining us again today. I also want to invite you to hop on over to AfterAwakeningRetreat.com. The beautiful reviews that we've received from people that were part of the retreat or have watched the recording since, which is exactly the same experience, by the way, the recording, just are absolutely beautiful and wonderful, and we are incredibly grateful. If that speaks to you, by the way, and this is what I always say is, the way that I make decisions, if I get invited to join something or experience something, my way of thinking is that I tune in, I read what's there to read, I look at it, and then my intuition tells me yes or no. This is not the right thing for everyone, and it's not the right thing for everyone at this time, but it's the right thing for some people. And so that's what I trust, is when I see something, I get a yes or I get a no, and I trust that. So if you feel inspired, or if you need practices, tools, meditations, breath work, if you would like guidance on that, things that you can use to help shift your thinking, to help correct it, to help bring it into harmonious paths, then I invite you to hop over to AfterAwakeningRetreat.com and experience it. It will be yours in perpetuity, so you can return to it. You can use the guided meditations every single day and the practices and tools. And you'll also be part of an exclusive Telegram group that is only for people that have attended or completed this retreat, and even the recorded one. So yeah, that's what we're inviting you to check out. AfterAwakeningRetreat.com. All right, friends, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.